ready.
Welcome to another episode of Buff in the Rough. Today we're going to try something new, a new series that I'll call Down the Rabbit Hole. It's an episode that takes a deep dive into a specific topic, and today's topic is going to be creating and maintaining a habitat for your rabbits, also known as Rabbitat. Special guest and longtime houndsman Keith Loudermilt is going to be with us to share his expertise. Help me welcome Keith to the program. Well, hey Keith, how are you doing?
Good. How's it going with you?
Oh, I can't complain. It's been a real fun morning because most of the time when I interview people, I'm doing it over the phone somehow, and doing it from my home office. But the home office today is in your man cave, and we just spent, I don't know, a couple hours out running rabbits around your training pen out here, and it was just fantastic. And I can't thank you enough for letting me invade your space this morning. So I really appreciate it. But Keith, before I go any farther, could you maybe tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have a Stony Point address here now, but I was born and raised in Statesville, grew up there. My dad was an old country boy that grew up on the side of a mountain with no electricity and no indoor plumbing. I'm a generation away from that, but he moved to town in Statesville, met my mom, and I grew up in town, but all we ever did with Dad was hunt and fish. And so got into the beagle game early on with gray dogs, and then Dad and I met Howard Stamey. He was friends with Frank Reese over in Taylorsville, who was a prominent beagler back in the day. Got us involved in the Tar Heel Beagle Club, and one thing led to another, and I ended up with a long career judging and touring the country with rabbit dogs. So,
well, I know folks can't see it; they'll just have to trust me. But when I look around your man cave, it's just covered in ribbons and trophies and plaques. So that tells me that you've, number one, been in this for a little while. Number two, you must have pretty good dogs while you've been in it.
I did okay. And I finished a few dogs. I take a little bit of pride in the fact that I averaged one litter a year and was able to compete with some of the top people in the country. So it's not always quantity of what, A lot of people breed 100 puppies a year, and they go through a lot of, it's not quantity. If you get the right quality dogs and focus on the talent, then you can be successful.
Well, the proof's here. It really is. You've done a really nice job. Well, I wanted to come talk to you again, and for folks that have listened to the podcast since the beginning, you were one of the first guys I had on, and I actually was able to go out and attend a field trial out at the Tar Heel Beagle Club. Had a big time. It was a lot of fun. We hunted in an enclosure which I wasn't used to, but I really liked it. And it never felt like an enclosure. I felt like I was just hunting out in the wild. I really did. So I wanted to come back and revisit you and ask you for a little help in maybe understanding how folks could turn a piece of their property or land that they have access to into something more rabbit friendly as far as habitat. Because one thing I noticed definitely here this morning walking around, but also at the Beagle Club, was just how great the setup is. It's so thoughtfully designed and laid out. And I was just wondering if you could, as part of what we talk about today, could just give people pointers on what they can do to create some rabbit habitat out there for them.
Yeah, I'd be glad to do that. And my opinions are based on experience and science. We can talk about this a bit, but there are several programs that are offered by the USDA and a couple other agencies in the government that will help you with money to establish different. If you have land, you can establish habitat for rabbits and use that at the same time in your rabbit preserve. One is EQIP, environmentally environmental quality incentives program. I did that for 3 years in my program. We also did it at the Beagle Club. It's a 3-year program. You get money for the what you do if you're accepted into the program, and they like to focus on native grasses and just native plants. They don't like to see, and if you're focusing on small game, they don't like trees. You can have some. There's some exceptions. I won't try to get into a lot of detail of the program, but the biologist comes in and they help you develop a plan, and it can be really good. There's CRP, also Conservation Reserve Program. We manage a section of land. It's less than 60 acres, but it's in the CRP program, and it's managed for small game also. So there's monies out there, and if you're a landowner, the CRP, you get money back. The equip, they pay for what you did basically. So, but ideally inside an enclosure, it's managed for small game. You're not going to have trees. If you saw out in my place, we spend a lot of time. We started with an old cow pasture here, and we didn't have a lot of trees to deal with. At the same time, we were surrounded by trees, and you're constantly in a battle with saplings trying to come up and invasive species trying to come in. We do a 2,4-D is your friend. 2,4-D, and I use a chemical called triclofor. I got a tractor, and we're constantly spraying. And the triclofor would help you get the brushy stuff. The 2,4-D gets all the stuff that climbs. And I want to keep, and you saw out there today, we mow a lot of paths, and we mow I'm mowing all summer. My paths are mowed. I keep it clean around the fence, and a lot of people are afraid to do this because they think, well, your air predators are going to get rabbits sitting out in the open. Hawks and owls are going to get a certain amount of rabbits every year, regardless. If you've got cover, if you manage cover, the rabbits will survive and they'll reproduce, and you'll be okay. We run, and inside our fence, we run every day of the week, year round, practically, and we are able to maintain rabbits. I think I told you, I think we introduced 7 rabbits last year. We didn't do that because we had to. They just became available. Want to mention another thing that a lot of people are not aware of. If you have a fence in North Carolina, you got to have a permit now. It's called a Controlled Rabbit Preserve Permit. And when this was first discussed, I sat in on a committee in Raleigh with the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission, and we fought some parts of that proposal initially that we didn't like. And so it ended up being really, I think, beneficial to us because it made it legal for us to trap a wild rabbit, introduce it into our fence, and chase it with a dog. Track that rabbit with a dog. It's now legal to do that in North Carolina. It's not legal to compensate a trapper for that rabbit, which we know that happens, but it's not legal to do that. I'm also president of North Carolina Sporting Dog Association, and we're working to change that law. If you look at the regulations today, fox hunters can legally trap a fox and compensate a trapper to release that fox into their enclosure. We're trying to get that same law passed for rabbit hunters.
Just makes sense.
Yeah.
Why would it be one way for one and not the other?
But getting back to where we started, and how do we get started with a fence, and if you can eliminate trees. It's not always practical to do that. If you can't eliminate trees, you're building brush piles, you're doing anything to make cover, because those rabbits cannot exist in open woods. The hawks and owls and whatever other predators you've got will manage to take whatever game you introduce in there. keep those paths mowed. That's your feed all summer. If you ever, when in the summer when the rabbits are breeding and they're moving around a lot during the day, they're always eating that. I can mow I can go over a strip and mow, and now it's not 5 minutes. Rabbits are browsing in that fresh cut grass, and so.
Keith, while we're talking about paths, do you have a recommendation on how wide a path is, and also the shape? Do you grid it like a tic-tac-toe board in straight lines, or how do you recommend somebody mow and shape a path?
Typically, you don't want a straight path. I've got a couple areas in my 2 fences that I have a feed strip that's straight, and there are reasons for that. But normally, it helps. We feel it helps with the aerial predators to have those not straight. If you can zigzag those paths, and we just mow. I have a 6-foot bush hog, and I just top it off, every few weeks, and it's just the width of that bush hog is what that path is going to be. My cover, now I was in that program. We did a lot of. There's 2 different varieties of switchgrasses, and there's a lot of varieties of switchgrasses out there. I've got some Alamo switchgrass, which provides the best cover. It gets pretty tall, but the switchgrasses, they grow in clumps, and the rabbits and the dogs can move around underneath all that cover. If in the wintertime or basically year round, if you need to find a rabbit, you go to the switchgrass and you'll find a rabbit. I've also got a Caven Rock switchgrass, which grows about waist high. I don't like it. I thought I was going to love it. I got a section planted in it. It wants to fall over prematurely, lay down just lower than I like. I've heard about a couple others. I can't name them right now, but I may try some different switchgrasses. But switchgrasses have to be managed because they'll get out of control. And I try to. I've planted some native grasses. I've also got a plant that I like a lot called partridge pea. It was recommended by the biologist. The partridge pea comes on in late May or June. Gets up about chest high, and it's got a beautiful yellow flower, and it's a cover that will stand all winter. Now you want these cover crops, but you also got to have feed strips. So I maintain with fertilizer, lime, and whatever the feed strips. And mine are mostly grasses. We've planted clovers and turnips and other things, and other people have different opinions about what to plant or what not to plant. I've basically depended on different grasses. Sometimes it's orchard grass or Timothy grass I'll add in a small section. Some of it's a variety of fescue. Not all varieties of fescue some of the original varieties of fescue had a fungus that was dangerous to rabbits and other small game. Those are not on the market today, pretty much. You don't have to worry about the fescues like you used to worry about them. Mm-hmm. We also talked about lime.
Yes. Talk to us. Yeah, tell us a little bit about lime.
Lime is your friend, and you can do soil samples. You can take them off, and the biologist or the state will tell you however many pounds of lime per acre for whatever kind of vegetation that you're working with, and that's what they think you ought to use. I'm telling everybody, the more lime you put on your property, the healthier your rabbits are going to be, the better they're going to reproduce, and that's from experience. And I told you a little bit about. I went through stages where I was doing a lot of lime, and I was having to take rabbits out of my fence. I got slack and went a few years without it. I was having to introduce rabbits into the fence. Mm-hmm. Went back to the lime program, and I had plenty of rabbits again. And I'm never going to stop. Every year I'm putting the lime to the property. Also, it benefits you to take down at least a third of your property. I take it to the ground, light disc it, and let it come back. And at that time, if you want to plant other things, if you want to, you want to put a section in switchgrass or a section in something else, partridge pea or whatever, that's the time to do it. And you can go back, some areas you may need to, round up and kill everything and start over. Sometimes you don't. And sometimes I just light disc it and let it come back. We got a lot of goldenrod here. You saw the yellow goldenrod. Got a lot of goldenrod here. We've got greenbriers and blackberries, and I try to manage those because when they get really, you get really heavy sections of blackberries and all, it tears the dogs to pieces. So.
Oh, yes. Well, tell us a little bit about what time of year do you take the property down to the ground and replant?
Ideally, it's end of February, early March. No later than if you're in a program like I was in, you got to do it before April 15th. And if you're a rabbit hunter in this part of the country, that's really not a good date. You got baby rabbits before that. We've seen them with the change in the weather the last number of years. We've seen nests as early as end of January, and and you're going to lose. I mean, I've gone over nest, taking cover out in March, and that's going to happen. But if you manage it, it won't make a difference in your population. They'll multiply and you'll have a lot of rabbits.
Can you talk to us about size? I know ideally to be able to go run your hounds, I mean, it'd be nice if everybody had a 50-acre patch to go to, but I don't know that that's realistic. What's kind of the minimum size needed to create a place that would hold some rabbits for you to be able to jump some rabbits with your beagles?
Well, you could, my starting pen is somewhere close to 3 acres. I got a lot of cover, got a lot of rabbits in there. I use it not just for puppies, I solo or brace dogs in it. If you're going to train, and we're talking about training dogs basically, but if you want to run a pack, I can put 5 or 6 dogs on the ground. I got a little more than 20 acres in my fence. And it's ideal, but I got a lot of cover. If the more cover you got, the less property you got to have. If you're in open woods and you got 10 acres, that's not a lot of land. If you got 10 acres and a lot of cover, yeah, you could run all day with a pack of dogs.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point. So talk to us a little bit about your fence. And one of the reasons I'm so happy that you're sharing with us today, I just see a future, at least where we live, where it's going to become very favorable if someone has access to a place to hunt that is enclosed. And the reason being is just development around here. These roads are getting there's a lot of traffic. A lot of traffic going around here. You worry about your hounds getting out in the road and something bad happening to them. You also worry about just neighbors. Again, just a lot of development going on here locally. And so I think these are going to just become more and more popular as like-minded folks get together and want to preserve our sport. They want to make it as safe as possible too. So could you talk a little bit about your fencing and like what's a good type of fence or a good gauge of fence to use, and maybe describe that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I've had this property I'm on now a little more than 20 years. We built the fence at our Beagle Club, Tar Heel Beagle Club. We got on that property in 1989. We actually bought it in 94. And I've seen every kind of wire and fence out there, different clubs and whatever around the country. I learned the hard way that started with some 20 gauge coated. You always want coated wire. Mine was a 1-inch coated 20 gauge wire, and it was not thick enough. Mm-hmm. And I was continually getting holes in it from varmints and dogs learning that they could chew and get out. Mm-hmm. And lost one dog on the highway, and whenever that happened, I came back in with 17 gauge and double coated the whole bottom of my fence, and I've not had a problem since then. But this is my personal. You can get this, and it's basically wire that's used in lobster traps and things up in the Northeast, but it's a 17 gauge, 2-foot wide strips, and you can get it in 100. I think it's 100 or 150 foot to a roll, and just tie it together. I buy these. I've got a bucket full of stainless steel. It's like a hog ring, but it's smaller, and you just tie all that together with your hog rings. I run high tensile on the bottom and high tensile on the top, and it's good to have a row in the middle, and then just tie your wire to that. Put up your T-post and have a line post about every 30 feet or something. Run your high tensile, tie that rubber coated wire to all that. I take mine up about 5 feet, and a lot of fences are 4 feet. And a deer can go over a 5-foot fence if it wants to go over. But I'll make this comment too while we're talking about the height of fences. I never have deer in my fence. People, our Beagle Club, we struggle with it all the time, but I don't have deer in my fence. I run every day of the year if it's practical. And I think the activity has as much to do with it as anything.
Right.
Because I got fewer predators in there. I've got hardly ever have. I've had 2 deer get in the fence, and they got out as fast as they got in. And so I like mine, but I like my fence about 5 feet. And a lot of the guys, they'll get a 4-foot wire, turn. You got to have a skirt at the bottom. And the other key thing about when you build that skirt, and I know people that they'll trench and and put their wire below ground, and that's okay if you can afford to do that. But it's simple to turn that skirt in. You tie it to that bottom high tensile, turn it under about a foot at the bottom, let the grasses grow up through it, and that grass will. That fence is not coming up.
Right.
Once that grass grows up through it, to maintain that. Now I mow. You've seen I'd mow around my fence just like I'd mow in the paths, and you can. I got a tractor, and I said earlier 2,4-D is your friend. I go around several times a year and spray that fence. Anything that shouldn't be there, anything that climbs, we'll get it. 2,4-D won't hurt your grasses. I use a lot of 2,4-D, and I'm spraying. I'm looking around. I got grapevines trying to grow on the ground. I got pokeberry bushes. I got privet. Privet is god awful. You never want privet in your fence. That's another invasive species.
It's terrible. Privet is terrible.
It's a tree called a tree of heaven also. You see them on the interstates and all. Copel is what it is. I had a major issue with copel. Biologists told me you got to kill the stump on that plant. If you cut that tree or that sapling and you don't kill the root, 20 friends come to the funeral. And I fought it, and I had a section. I brought a big machine in and cut it all down, and I killed the dirt for about 2 years. There wasn't nothing left. And there were some seed trees on the outside of the fence, and we had to go out and eliminate those trees. And today I got none of it. It took years to get to that point, if you ever get it started. So,
well, Keith, you've kind of walked us through maybe what size, maybe what needs to be growing in there, what doesn't need to be growing in there, laying out paths, maintaining it, your fences, how to maintain your fences, a little bit about predators. One of the things that I just thought was awesome was right out in the middle of your pen is a platform, a raised platform, and some folks maybe have been at clubs and been able to walk up in those things. They're fantastic. I loved yours. I think I would just go up there every morning with a cup of coffee and just sit there for all day, probably just listening to the hounds run. But you can see so much better. You were talking about your grasses being 5 feet high or higher. It would be difficult if you were standing at ground level to see some of the action going on. But if people wanted to have a platform on their property so they could see a lot farther and have a better idea of what their dogs are doing, what they're running. What are your recommendations for that? Like how tall, how big? What do you think?
Well, the one I built, and I think I told you this, I saw a similar one at the Belmont Jefferson Beagle Club in St. Clair, Ohio. Took a picture of it, and ended up building something similar. It's 12 feet off the ground. Now I'm at a point on the property where that one is. It's a high point, so I'm kind of looking down at everything from that level. Yeah, I'm thinking, well, it would depend on where you're at and how. If you wanted to make it 15 feet or more or whatever. I've got stairs going up to mine, so you don't want to be extreme. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a lot of stairs going up there. I got a roof on it and rails around it. It's, we did it right, but the platform internally is 12 feet by 12 feet. We can throw up chairs, and I've got folding chairs and stuff up there we can put up, take down. It's really cool. I mean, it's nice to have friends up there and hang out while the dogs are running and tell lies and whatever.
Yeah, well, that's the most fun probably.
Yeah,
but it is nice. I mean, you could sit up there like you said with your friends, or if you're working on dogs together, you can actually go up there and see what they're doing. That's a great observation point.
Takes money. We want to have, it's mentioned the Tar Heel Beagle Club. We've got two nice, about 40 acre each enclosures, and we're going to want to build a couple of towers there. We got to raise the money to do it. Mm-hmm. We're spending $6,000 a year on insurance and taxes, and takes money to keep up. And we're actually incorporated. It takes money to keep a corporation alive. So, but we got a great membership there, and one of the strongest clubs in this part of the world. Mm-hmm. I call it observation tower or whatever, but we get out there and hang out a lot.
Well, I understand why. I'd loved it. I really would. I'd spend all my time out there. Well, Keith, are there any things that are maybe common mistakes people make when they're starting out? We probably covered some of that just in talking about a lot of these different topics, but if you could give some advice to somebody, just what to avoid, mistakes that you've made that you'd stay away from, or just pointers. Is there anything else you'd add?
Well, a number of things. We talked about wire. Just make sure you get a heavier gauge wire to start with. You don't want to do like I did and end up having to buy wire twice. Always, I talk a lot about 2,4-D. I talk a lot about mowing. I go to beagle clubs a lot in different places, and it's kind of a common mistake, and I see this with other people that do the same thing. But if you let your cover grow right up into your fence, you can't maintain your fence, and it only gets worse. You need to keep that in that perimeter inside that fence clean all the time, and keep it mowed and looking good, because you're going to have to work on that fence. Something's going to happen. The fewer trees, the better. If you can get by with no trees at all, that's great. If you can't, if you got trees around your fence, and they're going to be on the fence occasionally. Mm-hmm. That's a big deal. One other thing I like to do, we hadn't talked about, in the spring, I like to put out sulfur blocks for the rabbits, and that sulfur is kind of like an antibiotic almost. It has a medical benefit. They need salt anyway. I don't know if you noticed, I don't have water on the property.
Now that you mention it, I didn't notice that, but yes.
Yeah, there's not. The rabbit, if he'll get all the water he needs from the plant and the dew on the ground. If you looked under, I've got a power line goes through there. There's a ditch there, and if it rains, it'll hold some water in that ditch underneath the cover. If it's dry, I don't have any water on the property, and rabbits survive and do fine without it. As far as other things, I'm racking my brain while we're talking here, but the beagle clubs, I was about to say, make that same mistake. They don't cut their paths until a week before a field trial, and then they what happens is you leave stubble there, and that can actually injure a dog. Somebody falls on this thing and it's sharp on the edge, and it's been mowed. You can't mow it so close, and that cover never come. You got a dead spot all winter.
Mm-hmm.
If you're mowing that all summer, you got grasses on there all summer. You got nothing to worry about. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to trip and fall and run a stick up their hand. Or I've had dogs that run those things up in them, and you end up at the vet.
Oh yeah.
Doing surgery, digging a piece of something out of one. So
I mean, to me, it's nice to make it simple so I can understand it. But it sounds like it's almost like an extension of your yard. I mean, you've got to cut your grass at your house. You've got to maintain your paths and your fence rows.
I mow it almost as often as I mow my grass. Mm-hmm. It depends on how, if you're getting rain, how much it's growing. Mm-hmm. We haven't had rain the past month to speak of, so I haven't done a lot of mowing. I'm going to do some. We're leaving for vacation next week. I'll do some mowing before I go. Mm-hmm. But
so it's not a jungle when you get back.
Yeah. Well, I like it to look good too.
Yeah, it looks terrific. I haven't seen a better setup than this. It's really impressive. Well, Keith, is there anything I didn't ask you about that we didn't cover that you wanted to cover? Any other things you want to talk about?
One thing, as far as rabbits are concerned, it's legal now to trap a rabbit and put him in your fence. I do like to introduce. I'll take a few rabbits out every year, introduce a few rabbits, and that gives you some genetic diversity. If you rabbit hunt, everybody that rabbit hunts knows, a rabbit lives his life in about a quarter-acre area. But when you rabbit hunt and you jump that buck and they're already starting to breed, he might go a half mile or more. Well, he starts circling over there where he came from. You're waiting for him to come back. He's not coming back. He went home. Mm. That's how the rabbits in the wild have genetic diversity. They travel and breed, and then they come back home. Well, they can't do that inside this fence. Mm-hmm. So we're taking a few out, putting some new genes in there. Mm-hmm. I don't know how scientific that is. That's just my thinking. And that's what I've always done, and it seems to work. But
I never really thought about it.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. Well, Keith, you mentioned the Beagle Club. I don't want to get off of here without giving you a chance to talk about the club and maybe upcoming events or get a plug in for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We do. As I mentioned, we have probably in this part of the world, we have the best, strongest Beagle Club in the United States. There are clubs. There's good clubs all over, but in the Carolinas, Virginia, and right now, as far as AKC Beagles go, the Carolinas, Virginia are number one in registrations and field trial entries. We're still growing. Field trials here in some other areas of the country are losing it. They're losing entries and losing clubs. We're not doing it here. But Tar Heel, we were. If you don't remember, we were a charter member of the United Beagle Gun Dog Federation. The club was founded as a gun dog club back in the late 70s, early 80s, and started holding what we call small pack option trials. We have our small pack option AKC licensed field trial this coming November. We have a web page and a Facebook page if anybody needs to look at dates or whatever. Trial dates are on there, tarheelbeagleclub.com. And we also hold the state championship gun dog brace. If you don't know what gun dog brace is, typically the hounds go down in trios in first series, and then judges will come back with 6, 8, 10 dogs they want to see again, and then they go one-on-one from the highest scored dog down. And we have the North Carolina State Gun Dog Brace Championship in March. We also last year hosted and are going to host again this year the American Kennel Club Small Pack Option National Championship. Is going to be at our club in April. And we have a Derby trial. I think this year we moved a date. The Derby trial, which a Derby is any dog that was born from July 1st to June 30th of the previous year. So this is 25, if your dog was born in June 30th of 25, he's going to be a Derby in 26. If he's born July 1st, he'll be a Derby in 27. So our Derby trial, and it's a qualifier for the UBGF National. And the November trial is also a qualifier for the UBGF All-Age National. And so that's moving around. We got the United Beagle Gun Dog Federation is an awesome organization. We own a bunch of land, 240 acres of land in Kentucky, big clubhouse, horse stable. Most everything there is judged off horseback. I think they got 300 kennels there, and they don't have enough rabbits to hold the trial. We had their national last year at Tar Heel. Hopefully they'll have those populations back up. They're doing a lot of the right things to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that's you said they were in Kentucky?
Yeah, it's Morgantown, Kentucky, just outside Bowling Green, United Beagle Gun Dog Federation. But our club is, I'm a little prejudiced. I've been in that club longer, I think, than any member now. I'm 66, so a lot of the older guys. There's some older guys than me that are in the club, but I've been in the club longer than any of them. We have a strong membership of younger guys. We got some guys in their 20s and 30s are taking leadership roles and getting out there and busting their butts, working, doing things to make the place better. So
that's terrific.
Yeah.
My one experience there was very positive. It was very clean and nice. It was just a nice club, very well designed. The hunting grounds were terrific. I can understand why it's one of the strongest clubs in the country and definitely in our region. Well, Keith, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you want to cover before we wrap it up?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. Again, thank you so much for taking time out, especially your press getting ready to go on vacation. I know right before vacation is a busy time. And so I really thank you for that. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, and hopefully some folks out there listening, this will plant a lot of seeds all over the country for little rabbit habitats to be popping up all over the country. So thank you again for your time, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and glad to do it, and I hope you'll come back and run with me.
I sure will. Thanks, Keith.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for listening to Buff in the Rough. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to be notified when new content is available. And please send comments and suggestions to buffintherough@gmail.com.